When did your husband's parents' McMansion reveal a hidden fraud? I just found out my husband literally committed financial fraud to buy his parents a McMansion, and now they are refusing to let me take the 5 vacation days I desperately need. And I'm honestly still shaking so hard my iPhone 14 almost slipped into the half-eaten Talenti container sitting next to my keyboard. I'm Aiden Chen, 37M, and I am currently sitting in the garage of what should be my dream home, but feels more like a gilded cage. I locked myself in here because if I had to hear my mother-in-law, Barbara, critique my posture one more time, I think I would legitimately commit a felony. I don't even know where to start with this dumpster fire of a life, but okay, I guess I have to start with George. My husband, George Chen, 42M. We've been married for almost 6 years, together since fall 2017, and for the first few years, everything was pretty standard middle-class dream stuff. We both had good jobs. I'm a VP of content strategy. He works in high-level tech sales, which always sounded important but mostly meant he flew around making vague promises and playing golf. The shift happened about 2 years ago, right when his parents, the illustrious Chens, decided they needed to downsize from their perfectly nice, paid-off ranch home in a quiet suburb to this absolute monstrosity of a McMansion in an exclusive, ridiculous planned community called the Gables. It's one of those places where every house looks like it swallowed 3 smaller houses and then vomited up 14 columns in a 3-car garage. George kept calling it an investment opportunity. Past me was such an idiot. I just smiled and nodded, focusing on my next promotion and the fact that we were finally able to afford the fancy coffee maker. We moved here a year ago. It was supposed to be our home. George insisted on taking out a huge new mortgage. I mean, truly staggering numbers, the kind that give me palpitations just thinking about them, to buy this place. He claimed he got an incredible deal. And then the plot twist nobody saw coming except maybe my therapist. George's parents moved in. George swore up and down it was temporary. Just until Dad sells the old place, Aiden, 2 months tops, he promised, looking me dead in the eyes over a very expensive dinner at Olive Garden where I was just trying to enjoy my breadsticks. 2 months turned into 6 months, which turned into a year. Now Mom and Dad Chen are firmly entrenched, occupying the entire ground floor, which they renovated to include a terrifyingly ornate reading lounge and a kitchen solely dedicated to making gluten-free artisanal sourdough, even though they definitely eat Taco Bell every Friday night. Here's where the actual nightmare starts. The financial strain has been insane. George used to be pretty decent with money, but lately every time I looked at our joint accounts, the math wasn't mathing, you know. It'd see massive unexplained withdrawals, like $200 here, $450 there, sometimes $1,000. When I asked him, he'd get defensive. "It's just business expenses, honey," he'd say while checking his Apple Watch, clearly avoiding eye contact. "You know how sales is, sometimes I have to cover things up front." I'd look at the receipts though. We're splitting the bills roughly 60-40, which feels ridiculous since I make a solid 6 figures, but he insisted he needed more liquid cash for his deals. Okay, fine. I'm paying $1,247 every month just for my portion of the mortgage and utilities, plus my $43.67 grocery bill from Trader Joe's, because I refuse to buy the artisanal stuff they require, and I literally haven't been able to save anything toward my retirement in 6 months. I feel like I'm sinking. 2 weeks ago, I got a notification that the $347 electric bill had bounced. This was unusual. I checked our joint checking account. It was $4.12 overdrawn. I immediately zelled $500 over to cover it and then texted George. Me Tuesday at 11:47 a.m. "Hey, the checking account is practically empty. The electric bill bounced. Did something big go out?" George 5 minutes later, "Yeah, babe, sorry. Just forgot to move funds. I'll fix it when I get home. Busy day, huge Q4 meeting." He didn't fix it. That night I started digging. I went through the account statements. The large withdrawals weren't labeled business expense. They were labeled George Chen personal, and they corresponded exactly with monthly payments being made to a separate mortgage account, an account I didn't recognize. I was shaking. I opened a new browser tab and searched the name attached to that secondary mortgage, George's dad, Robert Chen. It turns out the investment property we bought, this giant McMansion. It wasn't just ours. George put the house in his parents' names, using our combined income and capital gains from selling my old apartment to secure the loan, but he structured the ownership so they were the primary beneficiaries. He essentially bought them a retirement home and were just the highly paid tenants responsible for paying the massive mortgage that is absolutely destroying our finances. I felt my stomach drop straight to the concrete floor of the kitchen. I wanted to throw up right there. I felt so stupid. I'm a VP, for Christ's sake. How did I let him financially abuse me like this? It was giving major red flag energy, but I was apparently colorblind. I couldn't confront him then. I did the thing where you just smile and nod while internally screaming. I waited until I had all the printouts highlighted and labeled, sitting in a folder ready for battle. But before I could even say, "George, we need to talk about embezzlement," the in-law problems escalated. George's dad, Robert, 70M, is perfectly fine, mostly just obsessed with his Peloton and keeping the grass perfect. The real tyrant is Barbara, 68F, George's mom. She's the queen of passive aggression. She keeps a running list on the fridge of everything I do wrong, from leaving the dishwasher running too long to using the wrong olive oil. And then there's Logan Wood, 75M. He's our neighbor, the ultimate lawn Nazi. Logan, bless his rigid soul, lives for 2 things. Micromanaging the HOA and ensuring every blade of grass on his property and ours is precisely 1.5 inches high. George keeps making promises about hiring a professional landscaper, but Logan cornered me yesterday while I was bringing in the Costco haul and told me, "Mr. Chen, your dandelions are a disgrace. If you don't address this by 5:30 p.m. today, I'm filing a formal complaint." The man literally had a specialized measuring tape in his hand. I was already dealing with the discovery of the fraudulent mortgage, Logan the lawn Nazi, and the fact that I haven't slept properly in days. I think I managed 4 hours last night just staring at the ceiling. This brings me to the complication. I need a break, a serious break. I've been clocking 60-hour weeks. My inbox at work is at 247. I've used 2 sick days recently just to cope with the sheer panic attacks this house gives me, and I need a proper mental health reprieve. I decided I was going to take the 5 days of PTO I had left and book a solo trip. Somewhere warm. I put in the request last Friday. I was sitting in the kitchen this morning trying to eat some leftover pizza for breakfast when George came down looking stressed. Barbara was bustling around, critiquing the arrangement of my morning coffee mug. Aiden, George said, clearing his throat awkwardly. Listen, about your vacation request. I looked up. Yeah, it's approved, right? I checked the PTO balance. I have 80 hours banked. Well, yes, technically, George hedged, fiddling with the settings on his fancy Samsung Galaxy phone. But timing is tricky. Mom needs me here next week. Mom needs you? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. George, I put this request in a week ago. What does Barbara need you for? Barbara 68F immediately piped up from behind the industrial stainless steel fridge. Oh, darling, it's nothing major, but the garden club is hosting their annual inspection on Friday, and George needs to be here to supervise the hedge trimming. And frankly, your presence isn't really necessary, is it? You know how stressed you get outside the office. I stared at her, the audacity, the absolute disrespect. Barbara, I said, trying to breathe past the tightness in my chest. I haven't taken a real vacation in 18 months. My PTO is mine and I need it. George stepped in, placing a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that only fueled my rage. Look, Aiden, if you go next week, I'm going to have to cancel the big client dinner I planned on Thursday. And Mom really needs the emotional support during the inspection. Let's just reschedule, okay? Take it in December. It's just 5 days, babe. Just 5 days, I repeated, my hands shaking now. George, this isn't about 5 days. This is about me being able to step away from a job that is killing me in a home environment that is actively making me insane. I already paid the security deposit for the Airbnb. You paid a deposit without approval. Barbara gasped dramatically, clutching her chest like Id just announced I was cooking meth in the oven. It's a refundable deposit, Barbara, relax, I snapped, realizing that I was done. I was done with the financial abuse, the micromanagement, the constant feeling that I was secondary to his parents' absurd lifestyle. I pushed back from the table. George, the vacation request stands. I am leaving on Sunday. George's face went dark. He walked right up to me, standing too close. He lowered his voice. Aiden, if you leave, I guarantee you I will have a serious problem at work. They need me available, and if I have a serious problem, we have a serious problem. You need to be supportive considering everything I've done for us. Everything you've done for us, I almost laughed. Like buying your parents a mansion with money you funneled out of our joint account and then forcing us to pay the mortgage on it while telling me I can't take legally earned time off. He flinched hard. Barbara froze by the fridge, momentarily forgetting her artisanal sourdough starter. Don't be dramatic, Aiden, George hissed, leaning in closer. I needed to secure the asset. It's complicated financial structuring, something you clearly don't understand. And if you think you can just march out of here on Sunday, you're wrong. I'm revoking the PTO request myself. I blinked. You can't do that, George. It's my time. Watch me, he said, pulling out his phone and typing furiously. I am your husband. I own half the debt in this house. You need to be here to show the lender you're committed to this property and this family. If you try to go, I will call HR and I will tell them you are not only abandoning your professional duties during a crucial planning phase, but you are also engaging in severe marital misconduct that jeopardizes our combined credit rating. You'll be taking unpaid leave, or worse, you'll be fired. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's when the shaking started for real. My vision got blurry and I realized I was just staring at the chipped paint on the baseboard. He was threatening my job. My financial independence, the one thing that keeps me afloat. I grabbed my car keys, my wallet, and my laptop. I didn't say another word to him or Barbara. I literally ran out the back door, past the ridiculously expensive Peloton sitting unused in the sunroom, and into the garage. I didn't even bother putting on shoes. I got into my beat-up 2018 Honda Civic. I needed a minute to process that I was married to someone who was using my financial necessity as a tool for emotional and professional blackmail. I drove until I got to the nearest Target parking lot, because for some reason, Target parking lots feel like the safest place in the world when your life is collapsing. I pulled into parking spot A14 near the cart return and started trying to breathe. I wasn't going to let him do this. I wasn't going to let them sink me. I pulled out the folder with the financial documentation I had secretly gathered. This wasn't just in-law problems or a bad marriage. This was illegal. I immediately texted my friend Lee 38F, who works in corporate law. Lee, I need serious advice. Urgent, like emergency legal advice. It involves George, his parents, and a mortgage I didn't know about. I think he committed fraud to buy them a McMansion, and now he's threatening to get me fired if I take vacation days. Lee, 2 minutes later, what the fuck? I'm coming to you. Where are you? Me, Target A14. I'm in my Civic. While waiting for Lee, I decided on a plan. I wasn't going to try to reason with George anymore. I wasn't going to scream at Barbara. I was going to use the one weapon they didn't think I had, the law. I opened up my browser, my fingers still shaking, and typed in the search bar, financial abuse divorce lawyer. My phone immediately rang. It wasn't Lee. It was George. I let it ring and ring. He tried 27 times in 1 hour. Then the text started. George 1:05 p.m. Aiden, where are you? We need to TLAC. George 1:07 p.m. Call me back. This is serious. You're overreacting. George 1:11 p.m. Come home, babe. I was stressed. I didn't mean what I said about your job. We can reschedule the trip. George 1:15 p.m. Mom is worried sick. Don't be selfish. George 1:20 p.m. You are making a huge mistake. Don't do something stupid. I blocked his number. I felt a weird mix of terror and savage relief. Then about 20 minutes ago, I got the last text. It wasn't from George. It was an email notification. My work HR department. Subject line urgent PTO revocation. I clicked the email open. It was a formal notification. My requested 5 days of PTO had been officially denied, citing critical team staffing needs and documented spousal disagreement regarding resource allocation during a crucial quarter. I felt the last thread of control snap. He did it. He actually contacted HR and leveraged our marital status and his position to directly sabotage my ability to take time off. And he knew exactly how much I needed it. I started taking pictures of the mortgage documents, the email from HR, and all the financial statements. I sent them to Lee's secure messaging app. I took a deep breath trying to regain my composure. I was going to need an attorney. I was going to need a plan. And I was going to need to find a way to get my name off that fraud-ridden McMansion mortgage before it completely bankrupted me. I checked my phone battery 12%. I needed to find a charging station, and I definitely needed something stronger than gas station coffee. Just as I was about to start my car, another notification popped up on my phone. It was the Ring doorbell app notification set to share motion alerts with me from our house. Usually I ignore it, but something made me click on it. The footage was a few minutes old. It showed George and Barbara standing on the front porch talking intensely with someone. That someone was Logan Wood, 75M, the lawn Nazi neighbor, wearing a ridiculously starched polo shirt and holding a clipboard. I watched George pointing animatedly at the front yard, specifically at the corner where Logan had complained about the disgraceful dandelions. Logan was shaking his head, writing something down on his clipboard. George pulled out his wallet and handed Logan a crisp, large bill. Logan nodded, tucked the money away, and then leaned in, putting his hand conspiratorially on George's shoulder. Then I heard the audio of their conversation, slightly muffled but clear enough. George, look, Logan, just keep an eye on things, okay? Especially my husband. He's been erratic. If he tries to remove any of his belongings or if he talks to anyone, just let me know immediately. I don't want him jeopardizing the arrangement. Logan, the lawn Nazi, leaning closer. I'm paid to watch everything, Mr. Chen. The property line, the shrubbery, and your personal affairs. Don't worry, your partner isn't going anywhere without me noticing. You're lucky I have that new security camera package. I see everything. George smiled, a horrible, triumphant smile. Excellent. Thanks for the help, Logan. Don't forget to send me the receipt for that $85 plumber charge you found on the side account. Need to make sure the books balance. Logan nodded, looking intensely satisfied, and walked away. I stared at the screen. Logan Wood, the judgmental, lawn-obsessed neighbor, wasn't just reporting on the grass. He was being paid by George to spy on me, and he had access to a mysterious side account where he was submitting fake charges. It suddenly clicked. The large, frequent withdrawals from our joint account weren't just covering the secret mortgage payments for his parents' house. Some of that money was going to Logan, the lawn Nazi, to be a paid informant on my movements, and potentially to create fake expenses for some sort of complex tax evasion or further financial structuring I couldn't even fathom. I felt cold dread mixed with volcanic rage. The betrayal was so much deeper than just the McMansion. It was calculated. It was coordinated. And now George had weaponized my workplace and was using the neighborhood busybody as a personal security detail. I'm still sitting here in the Target parking lot looking at that Ring footage, realizing I'm not just dealing with a bad marriage. I'm dealing with a small-scale criminal enterprise orchestrated by my own husband and his parents, with the neighborhood watch acting as a paid thug. I deleted the Ring app from my phone immediately. I need to get out of this car and find a quiet library or something before Lee gets here. I have all the evidence I need. I just need to figure out how to escape without triggering Logan the spy. My heart is absolutely hammering against my ribs. I'm going to need to file for divorce, but I can't risk him finding out before I get my ducks in a row. He already threatened my job. What's next? I need a lawyer who specializes in financial fraud, and I need to file a temporary restraining order on George, Robert, and Barbara Chen, and maybe even Logan Wood immediately. I'm literally cornered, locked out of my own life, and the only way out is through a full-scale legal war. I need to know, internet, am I insane? Am I overreacting? Tell me I'm not crazy. What do I do? How do I start the legal action when my husband is paying the neighbor to watch my every move? I'm terrified to go back home. I'm terrified to go to work now that he's involved HR. I'm officially homeless, jobless, and completely screwed, all because he wanted his parents to live in a bigger house. I need help, I need a plan, and I need to know the best way to leverage this financial fraud to ensure I get out of this McMansion mortgage completely clean. What is step one? And yes, I know past me was a colossal idiot for trusting him, but please don't judge me. I'm literally crying mascara tears onto my keyboard right now. I just feel so trapped. Like completely and utterly trapped. I can't go back there, I can't. But I also realize I can't start a legal war without money. I need my salary. I need those 5 days off, even if I have to get them through a legal injunction. He thinks he won by revoking my PTO. He thought wrong. I just need to figure out where to sleep tonight and what lawyer I need to call first thing tomorrow morning. But honestly, the sheer shock that Logan Wood, the 75-year-old lawn Nazi, is a paid informant is just blowing my mind. He's probably watching my Civic right now from his attic window, timing how long I sit in the Target parking lot. I need to move, now, but where? I am literally shaking. I am literally shaking. I need to move, now, but where? That Ring footage of Logan Wood, the 75-year-old lawn Nazi, getting paid off by George to spy on me and then talking about a side account is still looping in my head. It's not just betrayal, it's organized crime, or at least highly effective white-collar stupidity. I slammed the Civic into drive. I couldn't stay at Target. Even if Logan isn't actively watching this specific parking lot, George knows my patterns. He knows I stress shop for fancy candles and too many reusable bags at Target. I drove maybe 3 blocks before my phone buzzed. It was Lee. Lee, 38F corporate lawyer, my literal savior, pulled up beside me in her black Tesla, looking like she was ready to close a hostile takeover deal, which TBH she kind of was. I abandoned the Civic and scrambled into her passenger seat, smelling faintly of old coffee and existential dread. Aiden, what the hell is going on? She demanded, pulling out of the parking lot and heading towards the highway. I read your message, then I saw the attachment dump. I need you to give me the 2-minute summary while I find us a secure location. You look like you haven't slept since the invention of mortgages. I took a deep breath. George bought his parents the McMansion. He used our assets but put it in their names. He's been funneling money from our joint account to cover their mortgage, plus paying the HOA fees, plus paying Logan Wood, our 75-year-old neighbor, to spy on me. He threatened to get me fired if I took my PTO. He then followed through and used a spousal disagreement clause to revoke my vacation. I have the documents, the HR email, and the ring footage showing the payoff. Lee just kept driving, her jaw getting tighter and tighter. Okay, she finally said, sounding dangerously calm. Okay. This is not just divorce territory, Aiden. This is felony territory. Wire fraud, possibly marital theft, definitely financial coercion. Also, George has zero authority to revoke your PTO, and using his marital status to interfere with your employment is a huge HR violation on his part, regardless of what shady agreement they cooked up. She drove us to a low-key Marriott downtown near her office, checked us into a room under a fake name, hers, not mine, thank God, and immediately laid out her laptop and 2 lukewarm waters she grabbed from the lobby. First things first, she said, looking straight into my soul. You are not going back to that house, ever. We need to establish residency elsewhere for legal proceedings and safety. You are going to stay here tonight. Tomorrow morning, you are meeting with the best family law attorney I know, Sandra Reynolds. She deals specifically with high-asset, high-fraud divorces. I already texted her. She's fitting you in at 9:30 a.m. I felt a wave of relief so massive I almost cried again. But my stuff, my clothes, my laptop charger. Forget the clothes, you need to protect your assets and your person, Lee instructed. We will schedule a police-escorted entry for a single box of essentials later this week once the restraining order is filed. You cannot step foot back in that McMansion unescorted. George knows you know, he already weaponized Logan. He will escalate. He has already escalated by attacking your job. She was right. He had gone from lying about money to actively trying to destroy my career in less than 24 hours. The job, I whispered. I need my job, Lee. If I don't work, I can't afford Sandra Reynolds or this hotel or the divorce. Sandra knows this. We'll address the HR issue after the divorce filing is secure, Lee promised. Right now, your priority is leverage. You have documented proof of fraud relating to a significant asset which will look really bad for George in front of any judge. That secret mortgage is your golden ticket out of the one you're currently paying for. We spent the rest of the evening compiling all the evidence onto a secure cloud drive. The McMansion deed records, the weirdly specific large withdrawals, the bounced electric bill, the HR email, the ring footage screenshot of Logan shaking George's hand. I even remembered something else. George had insisted I sign an affidavit confirming that I was aware of and approved the restructuring of our assets before we bought the McMansion, claiming it was standard refinancing procedure. I vaguely remember doing it, mostly because he said we couldn't get the interest rate we wanted unless I did. I realize now that was likely the document that made me legally vulnerable, making me seem complicit in the purchase even if I didn't know the full extent of the fraud. I signed something, I confessed, running my hands through my hair. 2 years ago, he called it a standard asset declaration. Lee's eyes narrowed. That's what they use to prove informed consent. We need to find that document. But for now, let's assume you were coerced and uninformed. We fight fire with fire, Aiden. We will allege financial coercion and theft of marital funds for non-marital purposes. It's a solid case. I didn't sleep much, but I felt marginally safer. At least I wasn't listening to Barbara critique my breathing in my own garage. The next day, Sandra Reynolds, the lawyer Sandra, was everything I needed. Sharp, direct, and completely unimpressed by George Chen's alleged tech sales expertise. She looked at the file Lee and I put together and didn't even blink. Mr. Chen, Sandra said, leaning back in her expensive leather chair. You are currently paying a significant portion of a mortgage on a property you do not own, which was secured using marital assets. Your spouse has actively undermined your financial independence and attempted to interfere with your employment to maintain this arrangement. Furthermore, the use of a third party, Mr. Wood, for surveillance and the questionable transactions through a side account suggest a pattern of serious misconduct. She used words like discovery, injunction, and contempt of court. I mostly just nodded, trying to absorb the sheer weight of what I was facing. The goal is simple, Sandra continued. 1. Separation and immediate protection via temporary restraining order, focusing on financial and physical safety. 2. Divorce petition based on irreconcilable differences but backed by the financial fraud. 3. Ensure you are completely released from the McMansion mortgage and recover the assets George diverted to his parents and Mr. Wood. Will I get fired? I asked, the fear still a cold knot in my stomach. We addressed that by sending a very carefully worded letter to your HR department, co-signed by me, outlining the spousal coercion, explaining that the disagreement George cited was an act of financial abuse, and demanding your PTO be reinstated immediately or we will pursue legal action against George and potentially your employer for enabling marital interference, Sandra stated. George leveraged your workplace. We leveraged the law. The plan was set. Sandra filed the emergency TRO that afternoon, citing the financial fraud, the threat to my career, and the clear coercion. The legal paperwork was a blur, but the most important thing was that George would be served with the TRO later that evening, meaning he couldn't come near me, the Marriott, or my workplace, and he couldn't touch our joint accounts without Sandra's explicit permission. Update: 3 days later, the escape. I stayed at the Marriott for 3 days working remotely. My PTO was still contested, but HR was suspiciously silent after Sandra's letter. I used a burner phone for all communication. I told exactly 2 people where I was. Lee and my boss, Chris, who thankfully is a decent human being and just told me to take whatever time I need and stop checking my email. On Friday morning, I went back to the McMansion, escorted by 2 uniformed officers and Lee, who insisted on carrying a clipboard and wearing an intimidating suit. It was exactly 8:00 a.m. George was home. Barbara and Robert were standing in the terrifyingly ornate reading lounge watching the proceedings like a particularly dramatic tennis match. I walked in completely silent. George looked haggard. He hadn't slept either. He had deep bags under his eyes and was wearing the same wrinkled golf shirt from the day I ran out. He had clearly been trying to contact me incessantly, but since I blocked him everywhere, he was just stewing. "Aiden," George said, stepping forward, his voice a low, desperate plea. "Thank God, I've been trying to." One of the officers stepped between us. "Mr. Chen, you must maintain a distance of no less than 10 feet from Mr. Chen, as per the temporary restraining order served earlier this week." George froze. He looked at Lee, then at the officer, then back at me. He looked genuinely shocked that I had done this. "A TRO?" he sputtered. "Aiden, what the hell is this? We're married. This is our house. I didn't threaten you. I just got stressed about the client meeting and I am here to collect essential personal items," I said, my voice steady, sounding like I was discussing the weather. I felt strangely calm. The fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by a kind of cold, pure determination. "Do not speak to me, do not obstruct me." I walked straight to the office I shared with George, grabbed my work laptop, my personal filing cabinet containing birth certificates and passports, which I had thankfully kept locked, and 1 suitcase. I didn't even bother packing nice clothes. I grabbed socks, underwear, and 5 black t-shirts. The important thing was getting out. Barbara finally intervened, fluttering her hands dramatically. "George, what is happening? Aiden, you can't just leave. Who is going to organize the pantry? And where is the artisanal sourdough starter? Did you take it?" "Barbara, I wouldn't touch that thing with a 10-foot pole," I replied without looking at her. George finally seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. "The TRO? Aiden, you are making a massive mistake. You're ruining everything. We had an agreement. What about the mortgage? You are on the hook for that debt too." Lee stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a razor blade. "Mr. Chen, your counsel is now corresponding directly with ours. I suggest you limit communication to your attorney. Furthermore, any attempts to interfere with Mr. Chen's employment or his ability to secure new housing will be considered a direct violation of the existing order." As I was dragging my suitcase through the hallway, I saw Robert, George's dad, sitting perfectly still in the reading lounge. He wasn't saying anything, but he looked terrified. I realized he was probably just as blindsided by the financial fraud aspect as I was, only he was actively benefiting from it. Then there he was, Logan Wood. He emerged from his perpetually perfect front yard, walking his miniature schnauzer, Winston, who was wearing a tiny plaid vest. Logan stopped dead on the curb, watching me load my stuff into Lee's Tesla. He was holding a pair of shears, of course. He looked at the police car, then at Lee's expensive suit, and finally at me. The smug satisfaction that was there in the Ring video was completely gone, replaced by pure panicked confusion. "Mr. Chen?" Logan asked, his voice cracking a little. "What is the meaning of this? Is that an official police vehicle? Did you finally get cited for the length of your?" George, completely defeated, just waved Logan off from the doorway. "Just go back inside, Logan. It's fine. It's all a misunderstanding." Logan didn't look like he thought it was fine. He looked like his $85 plumber charge might be about to get audited. It was a small victory seeing Logan's confusion, but it felt huge. I got into Lee's car. I didn't look back at the McMansion. We drove away, leaving George standing alone in the massive front doorway of the house he ruined us both for. A week went by where I slept mostly. I moved into a tiny, furnished corporate apartment complex near my office. It's cramped and the air conditioning sounds like a freight train, but it's mine. I changed the locks, ordered a huge pizza, and watched really trashy reality TV. The legal process started immediately, and let me tell you, legal fees are designed to make you question every life choice you've ever made. Sandra, God bless her, insisted we file 2 separate motions immediately. The divorce petition and the motion to dismiss my liability on the McMansion mortgage, citing the documented financial fraud and lack of informed consent regarding the asset restructuring. The biggest win was the PTO. By Tuesday, I received an email from HR stating that due to unforeseen external circumstances and the subsequent review of internal policy, my 5 days of PTO had been reinstated, effective immediately. They didn't apologize, but they didn't fire me either. They just quietly backed off. George's attempt to weaponize my job failed, and frankly, that felt better than any amount of money. I took the reinstated PTO. I didn't go to the Airbnb. I just stayed in my tiny apartment, catching up on sleep, processing the trauma, and reading every single piece of advice you guys left on my previous post. I realized I needed to secure all my professional digital life. I changed every single password, implemented 2-factor authentication on everything, and closed all joint credit cards and lines of credit, informing the banks about the ongoing fraud investigation. This led to an expected explosion. The Great George meltdown via voicemail on Wednesday. My phone, the new burner, started lighting up with calls from the numbers I hadn't blocked yet, mostly the corporate numbers I had forgotten about. George left me 3 voicemails, and I have to share the transcript because it's genuinely hilarious in a tragic way. Voicemail 1:17 p.m. Aiden, what are you doing? I just got a notification that the Amex Platinum card was canceled. Do you know how much money I had riding on that for the next quarterly forecast? You have ruined my standing with the regional director. We need that card. Aiden, call Sandra now and tell her to undo this. We can talk, we can fix this. Voicemail 3:45 p.m. I am serious. I just tried to transfer funds to cover the landscaper, the real one, not Logan, and the bank froze the joint checking account. I have no liquid cash. How am I supposed to pay for anything? Mom is panicking. She can't get the special organic kale she needs for her morning shake. This is financial hardship. Aiden, you are hurting my family. And GL, hearing him complain about the organic kale while I was eating instant ramen in my tiny apartment brought me a small moment of savage joy. Voicemail 3701 p.m. Aiden, I know you're listening to these. This is not how we do things. This house, this McMansion was supposed to be our future. This was generational wealth. You are destroying the investment. Sandra Reynolds is ridiculous. She's demanding full accounting of the secondary mortgage and she's already subpoenaed Robert and Barbara's tax returns. You cannot drag my parents into this, Aiden. They are innocent. You need to drop this lawsuit, come home, and we can discuss a reasonable separation agreement. Otherwise, I will fight you on every single cent you claim. I listened to those voicemails about 5 times with Lee, who just kept sipping her cold brew and saying, oh, he is digging his own grave with every word. The most critical part was that he confirmed Sandra was already subpoenaing his parents' records, meaning the scope of the fraud was widening. It wasn't just George. It was the whole damn Chen clan using the McMansion as a giant debt-fueled tax shelter. The Loganwood problem and an unexpected ally, so Logan the lawn Nazi. He wasn't technically part of the divorce, but he was a critical witness and accomplice to George's financial shenanigans. Sandra suggested we ignore him, but I was paranoid. Every time I drove near my old neighborhood to pick up mail at a secure P.O. box now, I felt his old, judgmental eyes on me. About 10 days after I moved out, I got a text message from an unknown number. Unknown 902 a.m. Aiden Chen, this is Logan Wood. I need to talk to you. Urgently. Do not tell George. My stomach dropped. Logan, the informant. I showed the text to Lee. Absolutely not, Lee said immediately. He's trying to trap you or George is using his phone. Any communication must go through Sandra. But what if he's scared, I argued. What if he's realizing George has put him in legal jeopardy with that side account? Lee sighed, knowing my tendency toward chaos. Fine, if you must, meet him in a public place. Bring an audio recorder. Do not discuss the divorce terms, just let him talk about the money. I agreed. I texted Logan back, setting up a meeting at a generic Dunkin' Donuts in a different county. I arrived first, wearing dark sunglasses and a truly hideous baseball cap. Logan Wood showed up looking less like a lawn Nazi and more like a terrified septuagenarian. He was wearing a tracksuit and his loafers had grass stains. This was not the Logan I knew. He ordered a black coffee, sat down, and immediately started whispering, even though the Dunkin' was practically empty. Mr. Chen, I apologize, he started, twisting a napkin in his hands. About the spying or the dandelions? I asked flatly. He flinched. Both, mostly the spying. George told me you were having an episode and that he needed to protect the asset. He told me you were dangerously unstable and might try to sabotage the house. He said he was paying me to watch for contractors or if you were trying to move things out covertly. And the payments? I prompted. The side account and the $85 plumber charge? Logan leaned in closer. That's why I need to talk to you. That side account is actually the HOA Emergency Maintenance Fund. George is the treasurer of the HOA and he's been diverting funds. He told me to submit fake receipts like that plumber want to cover up the payments he was making to me and also some of the payments he was making for his parents' personal expenses, like the custom-built wine cooler in the reading lounge. I felt a genuine chill. He was stealing from the homeowners association? Yes, and I was stupid enough to go along with it, Logan admitted, looking genuinely distressed. He paid me $500 a week to watch your movements and I reported everything. When the police showed up, I realized I am on the hook for HOA fraud and potentially accessory to whatever George is doing. I am 75, I cannot go to prison because of the Chen's ostentatious lifestyle. I just wanted to keep the neighborhood nice. This was a game changer. George wasn't just committing fraud against me. He was committing fraud against the entire community to maintain the appearance of normalcy and fund his parents' McMansion and spying habit. Logan, I said, pulling out my phone and putting it on the table, not recording, just making it visible. Do you have proof of this HOA fraud? Logan nodded miserably. I have all the receipts George sent me, the texts, the ledger he asked me to falsify. I was supposed to deliver the fake records to the board next week, but I can't, I won't, I'm willing to give you everything if you guarantee I won't be charged. I can't guarantee anything, Logan, I said, but my lawyer can. Give me the documents, everything, and stay silent. If you cooperate fully, it will go much better for you. Logan slid a heavy manila envelope across the table. Inside were printed texts, ledger sheets, and a very detailed spreadsheet showing thousands of dollars diverted from the Community Contingency Fund. He had just handed me the weapon to destroy George's reputation in the community he loved so much. I left Dunkin' Donuts feeling dizzy. I had gone in expecting confrontation and came out with the smoking gun that blew up the whole McMansion scheme. Fast forward to the 2-week mark. Escalation. Sandra was ecstatic about the Logan documents. She immediately amended the court filings to include charges related to HOA fraud and fiduciary theft, adding significant weight to the existing financial abuse claims. This prompted George's inevitable, desperate counterattack. On Friday, 2 weeks after I left, I received an email from George's attorney, a truly slimy guy named Marcus, whose email signature included 7 different certification acronyms. The email basically said that George was refusing to release me from the McMansion mortgage. and was, in fact, demanding that I pay $7,000 in reimbursement for various expenses related to the move-out, including the cost of hiring a private investigator, LOL. Like Logan wasn't enough, and the emotional distress caused to Barbara by the police presence. The worst part, Marcus was demanding George be granted sole use of my Honda Civic, claiming it was purchased with predominantly marital funds, and George needed a reliable secondary vehicle since his Porsche was getting serviced. The Honda Civic, my faithful, slightly dented 2018 Civic. That car was the only thing I owned that felt purely mine and wasn't wrapped up in McMansion debt or George's ego. I called Sandra immediately, furious. They want my Civic, are you kidding me? They have 3 cars, including a fully restored vintage Mustang that Robert drives 3 times a year. Sandra calmly explained that this was a classic throw everything at the wall and see what sticks tactic. It's leverage, Aiden. They want to make the fight expensive and painful, hoping y'all give up on the fraud claims just to get out clean. I am not giving up the Civic, I stated. I am absolutely not giving up the Civic. We will fight for the Civic, Sandra promised. But we have bigger fish to fry. We are preparing to depose George next week. We are also filing to depose Robert and Barbara given the depth of the fraud regarding their primary residence. This was going to force the issue. If Robert and Barbara had to testify under oath about how they acquired their house and how George was using HOA funds to maintain it, they would break. The deposition prep and my breakdown preparing for George's deposition was brutal. Sandra and Lee drilled me for hours, going over the timeline, the dollar amounts, and George's typical patterns of deflection and emotional manipulation. He will try to apologize, Sandra warned me. He will try to make you feel guilty for ruining the family dream. He will call you overdramatic. Do not engage. Stick to the facts. Did you consent to the mortgage being solely in his parents' names? Did you authorize the use of joint funds for non-marital property? Did he threaten your job? By the end of the 3rd prep session, I was emotionally drained. I realized how much I had internalized the constant critique and financial stress of the past 2 years. I hadn't just been ignorant. I had been slowly suffocating under the weight of their expectations and George's need to be a provider who gave his parents everything. I had a moment of pure weakness that night. I was scrolling through my old photo albums looking at pictures of George and me before the McMansion, when we were just 2 idiots in a cramped apartment happy with takeout pizza and a cheap bottle of wine. I almost called him. I almost gave in and offered to drop the fraud claims if he would just release me from the mortgage and let me keep my job and my car. The thought of fighting for months, maybe years, was exhausting. Instead, I called Lee. I can't do this, Lee, I choked out. I'm so tired. I feel like I'm ruining my life just to be right. Lee was silent for a moment. Aiden, you are not ruining your life, you are saving it. You found out your husband was actively committing fraud, using you as an ATM and then attacking your career when you tried to draw a boundary. He is trying to make you feel guilty because he knows he's losing. This isn't about being right, this is about being financially safe and independent. She gave me the pep talk I needed, reminding me that the financial abuse was the core issue. I was fighting for my future retirement fund, not just a divorce settlement. 3 weeks in, the deposition took place in Sandra's conference room. I was required to be present, but I was shielded in a separate room, watching the proceedings via video feed. George walked in looking entirely too confident, wearing a suit that was definitely too tight. He was flanked by Marcus, who looked like he was constantly smelling something bad. Sandra didn't waste any time. She started with the mortgage documents, then moved immediately to the financial withdrawals. George predictably went immediately into deflection mode. This is complex financial structuring, Your Honor, George started, trying to address an imaginary judge. Mr. Chen, I am Ms. Reynolds, and this is a deposition, not a courtroom, Sandra cut in sharply. Answer the question, did you use marital funds derived partly from Mr. Chen's previously owned assets to secure a mortgage on a property owned solely by your parents, Robert and Barbara Chen? I was securing generational wealth, George insisted. It was an investment in the family. Aiden was aware we were consolidating resources. Sandra played the ring footage from the day I left, showing George paying Logan Wood. Who is Logan Wood? Sandra asked. George's face went pale. He's a neighbor, he helps with yard work. And did you pay Mr. Wood $500 per week to keep an eye on Mr. Chen as per this audio recording? That's out of context. That was for neighborhood security, George stammered. Sandra then introduced the HOA fraud documents provided by Logan. She showed the falsified plumber receipt and the ledger entries. Mr. Chen, are you currently the treasurer of the Gables Homeowners Association? Yes, but and did you divert thousands of dollars from the HOA contingency fund to cover personal expenses for your parents' home and to pay for private surveillance of your spouse? George finally cracked. He leaned toward his attorney, Marcus. Marcus, I don't need to answer that. That's outside the scope of the marital dispute. It demonstrates a pattern of financial deception and asset concealment relevant to this dispute, Mr. Chen, Sandra retorted mercilessly. Let's discuss the PTO revocation. Did you contact Mr. Chen's HR department and cite marital misconduct to block his earned time off? George tried to recover. I was worried about his mental health. He was erratic. I was acting out of concern. You threatened to have him fired, Sandra stated, showing the email to the court reporter. George sat back, finally deflated. He knew he was caught. The fraud was too deep, and he had stupidly leveraged everything, including the HOA, to maintain the appearance of being successful. The deposition ended shortly thereafter. I felt a massive sense of vindication, but also exhaustion. 4 weeks later, the resolution begins. The fallout was immediate and devastating for George. First, the HOA found out. Logan, now officially flipped and cooperating with the police regarding the HOA fraud, presented his evidence to the board. George was immediately removed as treasurer and is now facing a civil suit from the HOA for restitution of the diverted funds. I heard, via a mutual friend who is enjoying the absolute drama, that his parents are currently fielding non-stop calls from angry neighbors. Logan Wood, meanwhile, is being hailed as an accidental hero, and his dandelions are ironically finally gone. He even apologized to me via email for the lawn comments. Second, the McMansion. Sandra used the fraud evidence and the coercion claim to argue that the mortgage on the McMansion was a voidable obligation, at least concerning my liability. The bank, seeing the complexity and the potential for federal fraud charges, decided they wanted nothing to do with this mess. The outcome: George and his parents were given a choice: sell the McMansion immediately to cover the fraudulently obtained loan, or face a full legal investigation into the asset structuring and tax implications. They chose to sell. It was an ugly forced sale. The McMansion, the symbol of George's excess and my misery, was going to be liquidated. I was completely released from the mortgage liability. This was the biggest, most beautiful victory. Third, the divorce. With the financial structure crumbling, George had no leverage. He settled quickly. He agreed to release me from all shared debt, including the ridiculous mortgage he still insisted on calling the family investment, pay a modest one-time settlement for the diverted assets. Now that his parents were selling, he suddenly found liquidity, and most importantly, I kept the Honda Civic. I also kept my job, and my HR department issued a very quiet, very official apology for the miscommunication regarding PTO. A 6-week reflection: I am typing this from my new apartment, which is basically a shoebox, but at least the only person critiquing my posture is my orthopedic pillow. I'm okay. I'm still dealing with the PTSD of realizing I was married to a financial abuser and a low-grade criminal mastermind, but I am okay. George and his parents are still living in the McMansion, waiting for the sale to close, which is probably the most awkward residency in the history of planned communities. George's job is hanging by a thread. It turns out getting deposed over financial fraud isn't great for high-level tech sales. He hasn't apologized. He just keeps texting me variations of "you were selfish and ruined the family unit." I blocked him on everything, including Venmo. He tried to request $5 for shared utility costs during the move-out. I had dinner with Lee last night. We drank wine, screenshotted George's pathetic Instagram posts. He's trying to sell the Peloton on his stories, and celebrated my freedom. I realized something profound during this whole mess. I didn't need the McMansion. I didn't need the columns or the granite countertops or the artisanal sourdough starter. I needed safety, financial independence, and the right to take 5 days off when my life was melting down. I still have bad days. Sometimes I wake up panicked, wondering if my bank account is empty or if my boss is going to call. The stress definitely impacted my work performance for a while, and my credit score took a small hit during the joint account freeze, but I'm rebuilding. The biggest lesson: trust your gut when the math isn't mathing. And if someone threatens your job over 5 vacation days, they aren't just an asshole, they are trying to control your life. I finally feel like I can breathe. I'm taking those 5 days of PTO next month, but instead of going somewhere warm, I think I'm just going to stay right here in my shoebox apartment and watch reality TV without the soundtrack of Barbara Chen critiquing my life choices. It's messy, it's expensive, and I lost 6 years and a lot of money to an illusion, but I got out, and I got the Civic. Anyway, I'm ordering more ramen now. Thanks for all the support, internet. We'll update if George tries to subpoena my cat or something equally insane. I wouldn't put it past him. I think I'm going to be okay, I really do.